Do you hear me okay? Good. So I wanted to get together this morning and just give you an update where we ended up in 2022 financially and what 2023 looks like. We would like to do these pretty much on a quarterly basis throughout the year. Just a real brief 15 minutes after church. We promise in the future we won't have a birthday party, so we'll start earlier than 10:30. And we'll also be doing some things in the messenger and stuff in the bulletin as well, just to keep everybody up to date and informed on where we're at. Alex, want to hit the next slide, please? So, our operating budget for last year was $773,451. The actual expenses during the year were $674,000, almost $675,000. So we ended up last year under budget by about $98,500. The pledged giving for last year was $383,000, and the actual giving was $600,000. So that's about 38% above the pledged giving. Our operating reserve at the beginning of last year was sitting about $85,816. And then in November, we decided to boost that from the bequest that came in, the Anderson bequest, and we added $85,000 to the reserve. And we basically used the original reserve during the year, and the operating reserve as of January 1st of 2023 was sitting at $96,441. Now, not paid last year were $29,000 of deferred apportionments. So Finance Committee and Council decided in June that we would defer paying apportionments at that point because we were getting close to exhausting the reserve at that point. And then we basically got the additional money from the bequest in November and didn't get the back apportionments paid in December. So those back apportionments from last year are going to be paid over the first 3 months of this year. So we're going to talk about it at the next finance meeting, but my intent would be to move the budget and obviously the expense from last year to this year. So it doesn't look like we're way over budget in the first 2 or 3 months. This was budgeted last year, it just wasn't paid last year. Any questions on that? Okay, Alex. So looking at 2023, the approved budget is $661,000, about $662,000, which is a reduction from the approved budget from last year of $111,000. The pledges that have been received so far for 2023, Pastor Rob has run a one-man pledge drive for us, and we have received $456,000 in pledges for 2023, and that is up significantly, almost $73,000 from 2022 in pledges. Pastor Rob put pencil to paper and looked at our past giving outside of what was pledged, and we've come up with an estimated giving for this year of just over $600,000. So that's what we're going to put in the budget as the giving part of the budget, and then the expense part of the budget is going to be the 661, almost 662,000. Given the operating reserve at the beginning of the year, that would put us basically at about $6,500 left in our operating reserve at the beginning of next year. So between what our estimated giving is and our operating reserve, we can basically pay off all of our expected expenses for this year. Now that 661 includes the restructuring of the staff that SPRC and the pastors did last year. And it also reflects Lisa's retirement at the end of June. Any questions on that?
Jim?
Yes.
So 6,500 is kind of close.
Yeah.
What happens if expenses end up being higher? Because one of the wild cards we're going to have is utilities. You don't really know what the first year of our HVAC
Right.
is going to mean. You don't know what utility costs themselves are going to be. How do we?
Well, I'm expecting personally huge savings from the HVAC project, so. It's something we got to look at, and actually, go to the next slide, Alex. This is the actual income or giving and expense from last year. And you can kind of see that both of them are kind of all over the board. Expenses were fairly consistent, more consistent than the giving was. But I think the point you make is good, that, you know, there's certain months, and the first quarter is usually a good quarter from a giving perspective. The second quarter is down because it's summertime. Not as many people are attending church on a regular basis. They're off family vacations or whatever. And then the third, fourth quarters tend to be the higher, or the fourth quarter at least the higher. So it is going to be. We're going to have to watch it throughout the year.
Jim, could you just clarify this slide? Because we can't tell, like, the blue and the orange, what is...
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to make this bigger. Blue is the giving, and then the orange is the expenses. And actually, yeah, Alex, go to the next slide. What I did is a running average of those, which doesn't really answer Greg's question, but I think the important thing that I get from looking at a running average is you can see that the expenses started out just under $65,000 a month and ended up down around 58,000. And that is a lot of the restructuring and things that SPRC and the pastors did in the second half of last year. And so those savings, which were about $7,000 a month, are going to continue throughout this year. On the giving side, if you kind of, you do the running average, you see it was fairly consistent on average throughout the year at about 52,000. So I think the finance group, when we meet next time, is going to have to address that question. When do we decide that it's time to do something to increase that? If you look at it, we should make it through the year, but with the variances from month to month in the giving amounts, then it's possible that we could exhaust the fund before the end of the year. Lisa?
Is the giving average based on pledges only, or also the giving that happens regularly as well as pledges?
It's all giving. That's all giving, yeah. Both pledged and unpledged giving. Any other questions? Yes, sir. I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
26,000, I believe it was
Yeah.
26,000 is deferred
29,
this year.
yeah.
Currently, we have not made the apportionment requirement. We don't defer it. I just wondered what the thinking or rationale might be towards that.
Towards paying it this year versus last year? Or? Well, I don't think the intent was to defer it to this year. I think that's basically what happened. We deferred it July through October. And then in our November meeting, we're trying to decide if we would pay them this year or the next year. And we were going to decide that at a December meeting, which we didn't have. We didn't have a December meeting. So they ended up rolling to this year. And if you look at both years together, it really doesn't matter what year you pay them in. But it ended up that they rolled to this year. Our intent was always to pay the back apportionments. But it just didn't get done in last year's fiscal year. Does that answer your question?
Maybe I'll get to that.
Okay.
Since we didn't meet in December, we didn't make the final decision on paying that 29,000 that hadn't been paid over a month period. So,
Can everybody hear?
Not the people at home.
we were supposed to make a decision in December. That didn't get made. So we passed the deadline for paying any of the previous year's apportionments, which was January 13. Our meeting was after that. But we did decide in our January meeting to go ahead and pay that $29,000 of the 2022 apportionment. And so we were preparing to do that on a 3-month basis. So in the first quarter, we're going to pay about a third of that apportionments from last year, in addition to our apportionments this year. So we are going to pay the 2022 apportionments in full. 2023 is another matter. We're still looking at the numbers for that, and they're a little bit high. We just got information about it this week. So we may make a decision that we're not going to pay that amount in full, or make an appeal to say we would like a reduction in the apportionments. And they've done that for us in the past as well. But we will pay all of last year's apportionments.
Jim, can I just add to that? I use the microphone. And then we just want to remind people too that Missions and Church and Society usually gets 5% of the budget. And because of the endowment, Missions, Church and Society received quite a bit of money. So we agreed to not get the 5% for this coming year. And then, but we said as a committee, we really encourage the church to pay the apportionment, because that's, we know that part of the apportionment really goes to cover missions.
Any other, did we answer the question, Roger? Okay. I guess I'll end it with, it's not good to have a deficit budget, but it's less of a deficit than it's been in previous years. As I look over the last 2 or 3 years, it's sometimes hard to see the patterns, because 20 and 21 we had the PPP loans, which basically, was a 10, 11, 12% shot of basically free money that kept us in the black. But if you kind of weed all of that out and look at what our pure giving versus our budgets have been, both of those numbers are heading in the directions that they should be. Our expenses are going down. Okay, so the pastor and SPRC and everybody has been successful in doing the hard work of right-sizing our expenses to the size of church that we are. And then I have seen and I see the giving side of the equation also increasing, you know, slowly but surely. And a big part of what we spent the last year and a half on was basically the growth aspect of the church, expanding our ministries and really trying to look to the future and to grow the church. So I see you, Linda. And as soon as I finish, I'll let you ask your question. Basically, I just want to say, you know, we aren't there yet. I think the goal is to have a balanced budget by 2024, by next year. I don't think it's overly aggressive. It's maybe a little aggressive, but I think we can do it. And in general, I just see kind of everything moving in the right direction. And, Linda?
We've been through some major changes with the endowment and then into the Geneva United Methodist Fund is what we're calling it, I think. Can you review with us how that trigger is to replenish the reserve fund? Is it not to the end of the year? Does it require a all-church conference? Does the council do it? Or how is that trigger to add into the reserve fund through the Geneva Fund?
So there's two ways. One, it would be every year the UMG Fund Committee has the opportunity to allocate some of the distribution from the fund to both the trustee reserve and to the operating reserve. So that can be part of their annual giving, which is basically done at the end of the year and approved by council and also by the church conference in November timeframe. The other is we can do special withdrawals to support the operating reserve. And there is no automatic trigger for that. I think it would just be finance committee, looking and projecting out what the giving, the spending of the church is, and making sure that we don't basically exhaust that fund. And so I think if Finance Committee is concerned and thinks that we do need to trigger that unplanned withdrawal from the UMG fund for the operating reserve, they would take that to council, who would then, we would have to do a church conference. And that has to be approved, how much, and approving doing it in the first place has to be approved by an all-church conference. Yes, sir.
So Jim, our stated goal is that a year from now, you standing up here showing us a balanced budget in 2024.
Right.
Doesn't it have to be quite a bit of work between now and then to figure out how that's going to happen? Because it's not going to just happen on its own. I mean, we almost have to start planning for 2024 now, and so we'll be ready when that happens.
Yes, we do, and we need to start looking at it. Again, so the $660,000 budget, there could be additional reductions potentially sitting out there in that amount, which could bring that budget down. There could be some unknown expenses there, like, what are we going to save because of the HVAC? And some other things. There could be additional staff restructuring during the year. So I think there is potential for that number to come down even further. Okay, but we need to start looking at that now. We need to be working with that throughout the year. And then on the giving side, yes, I think we need to get a group together, and we need to be looking at that side of the equation as well. Our numbers are growing, our attendance is growing, our membership is growing, so there should be some organic increases on the giving side over the next couple of years. I don't know how you would estimate that. I have no idea, but but yes, you're right. I mean, Finance Committee needs to be looking at that now, not waiting until, mid-year or end of the year. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just feel called to give a little testimony here. So, you might remember, and we don't always read this, but in Luke 2, after the story of Jesus' birth, we have the story of Simeon and Anna. And what we're told is that Simeon prayed for a long time before Jesus came. And I heard a sermon one time about how in order for something to have physical birth in this world, it has to have spiritual birth first. Hence, Simeon prayed and prayed and prayed, and finally Jesus arrives. So I think our challenge is to undergird this incredible, this detail, and just to be so grateful for Jim and others who can give us this detail. But our job now is to undergird this with our prayers. Is this going to be different this time next year? And that's our covenant, to join you, Jim, and to undergird you in prayer. Now, can I have an amen?
Amen.
I need all the help I can get.
Thank you, Mary Gay, for bringing us that last word. I'm encouraged. What we see here, we're about 12% away from making our budget through regular giving. We had 4 brand new givers this year, never pledged before. We had 23 giving units return to pledging after not being pledging this year. And so those are all encouraging signs. That the estimation is a coast budget. So we have the hard numbers of pledges. 98 pledging units gave us the number you saw there, 478 or something like that. And the rest is just a kind of an Excel spreadsheet calculation. If everyone does the same as they have done before, this is where we would be. So any growth that we experience, any other income streams, we didn't estimate in that 601, what we're going to get from a little bit of building usage and those kinds of things. So there's room for us to keep going. And so I'm really encouraged to know that we're not having to borrow from the government and those kinds of things. We're moving in the right direction. We've done a lot of hard things. We'll do some more hard things. But like I said, we just keep going and keep praying, Mary Gay. So thank you for doing that, and thank you all for your attention and your commitments to the ministry. It's really exciting to see us just turn around and keep going. It took us, if you remember, I gave a presentation before, it took us 20 years to get to the bottom, so it's going to take us more than 2 to get out of it, but we're coming out of it. So thanks, Jim, for the presentation, taking the time today, and I'm glad we can have these conversations.
One last opportunity. Any questions, comments? I'm sorry?
Is there any cake?
I'll go find out for you, John. All right, thank you. Thank you very much for coming today.